أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى ومن يعصهما فإنه قد غوى وإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن خير الأمور عوازمها وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في كتاب المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا وكثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله فقد فاز ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. صدق الله العظيم. Brothers and sisters, today the topic is the Hijra in Islam. Unarguably the greatest event in the Islamic history, the migration from Makkah to Medina. And this was an event which marked actually the Islamic calendar also. Later on it was decided. This allowed the worshippers, the Muslims, the believers to actually come to Medina and worship freely and to establish the Islamic state there. And this is regarded as the greatest event in Islamic history. As you know, Rasulullah ﷺ was in Makkah for 13 years, and most of the time he was facing adversity, all the time in fact. And the adversity got so strong. I mean, in the middle of his 13 years, he sent a delegation to Abyssinia on divine advice, and he was thinking about sending more later on. About 4 years before the migration, it is this year of huzn, sadness, when the mushrikeen decided to abandon, to expel all the Hashemite, Bani Hashim, and they were there for nearly 2 years outside Makkah when everything was boycotted on them, everything. The only time they could come was during Hajj. And so these were very, very difficult periods, and when they were allowed back, Rasulullah during the period of Hazan lost his wife Khadija radiallahu anha and his uncle Abu Talib, who was his protector, protecting him, in the society. And so what happened was Rasulullah ﷺ was at the lowest ebb, and he said, okay, let me go to Taif, and then Taif, maybe the people of Taif will listen to me. He went there, and that was also an unsuccessful mission. And so he came back, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soothed him with the Asra wal Maraj. And then Allah took him to the heavens, and as I said, comforted him. And when he came back, and then after 2 years, the migration to Abyssinia continued. He told his Sahaba to go, another delegation. And Something like 4 months before Rasulullah decided to migrate, he told Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, Abu Bakr Siddiq rather was saying, I will migrate, and he told him, no, wait, because when I get permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will migrate also, so we will migrate together. So Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu bought 2 she-camels and fed them very well, fattened them up for the journey. This is like 4 months before the actual migration of Rasulullah. And then Rasulullah asked for the hand of Aisha radiallahu anha well before that. Okay? So he used to go to their house twice. Aisha radiallahu anha says in the hadith that Rasulullah used to come. She was a young person at that time. She said, I can remember Rasulullah used to come at least twice, morning and evening, and in the afternoon rather. And on the day when he was wanting to migrate, he came at midday. And he came inside and told Abu Bakr Siddiq, my father, that he got the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to migrate. So there, of course, the camels were already prepared, but Rasulullah had to, of course, endeavor the exit. And this exit is described in the Quran as well, that you didn't throw the sand, but we did, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just blinded them when he was escaping. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was supposed to escape at night time, right? And this particular night, Rasulullah told his Ali ibn Abi Talib to sleep in his bed and cover with his garment. And the reason was because he wanted Ali to stay behind to give the amana. Rasulullah was Amin. People used to leave things with him. So to give all the belongings back to the mushrikeen after they have gone. There was no other reason. And of course, to make the mushrikeen look as if Rasulullah was sleeping in that bed also. And the Quran says here, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ يمكر بك الذين كفروا ليثبتوك أو يقتلوك أو يخرجوك ويمكرون ويمكر الله والله خير الماكرين. And remember, Muhammad, when those who will disbelieve plotted against you to restrain you or kill you or evict you from Makkah, but their plan and their plan and Allah's plans and Allah's plans are successful. Now, just before that, the Makkans were planning to kill him. This was another reason. Right to the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala planned it so that he would escape this night, because this night the plan was to kill him. And the chiefs of all the prominent tribes in Makkah assembled in Dar al-Nadwa and choked out a plan. They chose 11 men, one from each tribe, to participate in the striking of Rasulullah. Like Caesar was, Roman Caesar, the emperor, he was struck by each one in the cabinet, in the parliament, so that no one single person will get the blame. And this was the plot of the mushrikeen here also. And so they stood outside the house at night time, waiting for Rasulullah to come out in the morning, so they would do that. And as the night advanced, the band of young assassins besieged the Prophet's house, as he said, and kept a vigil of the long night, waiting to assassinate him in the morning. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, had his own plans. So Rasulullah walked out, and he threw some dust, and he walked out reading that the following verse. He was asked to recite the following, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَدْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْنِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. The meaning of, and say, my Lord, cause me to enter a sound entrance and to exit a sound exit, and grant me from yourself a supporting authority. And also it is said that Rasulullah was reciting Surah Yasin, the beginning passage of Surah Yasin, Surah Yasin, وَالْقُرْآنِ الْحَكِيمِ إِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ تَنزِيلَ الْعَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُمْ فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. This way he decided that, and he walked out, and they didn't see him. He walked out and he went to where they were supposed to meet, and they got on the camels and they went to the Ghar al-Thawr, the cave. There they hid for 3 days. They spent 3 days there. And the mushrikeen, of course, in the morning when they discovered that it wasn't Rasulullah was missing and it was Ali in his bed, they went about chasing him. And the reward for the Prophet ﷺ was something like 100 camels. Abu Jahl was the main instrument in this chase, and he announced that 100 camels will be given for dead or alive, Abu Bakr and Rasulullah, both of them, okay? So they went to, obviously this cave was about 5 miles outside Makkah, so this was one of the obvious spots. And that's where they were. When they got there, Allah ordered the spider to spin a web. And of course Allah has controls over all beings, everything is on. So they said, oh, this can't be the place. Anyway, so they got there, they were reluctant. They said, this is a newly formed web, they're not inside there. And inside the ghar, Abu Bakr was worried about the Prophet ﷺ more than himself, because they loved the Prophet more than themselves. And in Surah Tawbah we read, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لا تنصروا فقد نصره الله إذ أخرجه الذين كفروا ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا وأنزل الله سكينته عليه وأيده بجنود لم تروها وجعل الكلمة الذين كفروا السفلى وكلمة الله هي العليا والله عزيز حكيم. If you do not aid the Prophet, Allah has already aided him when those who disbelieved had driven him out. As one of two, when they were in the cave, and he said to his companion, do not grieve, indeed Allah is with us, and Allah sent down tranquility upon him and supported him with angels you did not see, and made the word of those who disbelieve the lowest, while the word of Allah, that is the highest, and Allah is exalted in might. So this was one of the first events. I can't call it, somebody told me don't call it a miracle, but it's like a, like a miracle, yeah. An event where a supernatural event occurs suddenly, the spider spins a web and disallows the party, the enemies to strike. Right, so from there on, and of course during this stay in the cave, Abdullah, the son of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, who used to actually come and bring them food, and even at night time he used to bring a sheep to milk and to give them milk, and then he used to take the sheep away. And so and go back to Makkah to sleep with the rest of the people, so he wouldn't be discovered like that he was somewhere. And so and also when they were packing at Abu Bakr's house, when Rasulullah said, I've got permission to migrate, Asma, one of the other daughters of Abu Bakr Siddiq, she tore her girdle, they used to tie their, libas with that, the garment, and she tore it into two, and she used one of them to tie the food, the leather food, bag to the camel, and also the other half she tied it to her. So she was known as, the girl of the two of girdles. I'm just trying to find it's an Arabic word that they use, and so she's famous for that. Right, so they continued their journey, and the other thing that happened was, when the Abu Jahl sent a message out that we have the prize of 100 camels, there were 3 or 4 people that were listening to this original message, and one of them was Suraka ibn Malik. He was a marksman. He was a well-known bounty hunter who was very, very accurate and who knew, and he proved it. He secretly went from the backside of Makkah, not to tell anybody, and he chased, and he found them. They were at that time traveling on the camels, and they had their aide, I think, Amir bin Furera, who was the servant of Abu Bakr Siddiq. He was still with them. And so Rasulullah was always looking in front. Rasulullah, as you know, never looked like this. He always used to turn his complete body around. This was his characteristic. So he was riding, and Abu Bakr was keep looking that way, worried about Rasulullah. He said, Rasulullah, somebody's coming. Somebody's chasing us. and it was Suraka bin Malik. And he said, Suraka tells this story. He says, when I got so close, I could shoot an arrow. And he says, suddenly my horse sank into the sand, into the desert, and I fell off the horse. And I said, this is unusual, it's never happened before. I got back on the horse again, and the second time I went and I got more closer, and again the horse sank, the front legs sank into the front and threw me off. And he said, I thought this was unusual. And he realized it was some supernatural, that the Prophet was praying and doing something. And then third time, he got on the horse, and just before that he threw lots. You know, these mushrikeen, they used to do, you know, like we have, these people here in England, they have lottery and, you know, charms and things. They used to do this, and they threw his arrows, I think, and the arrow landed in a certain position, and he said, oh, it's telling me not to go. But he said, no, I'm going. So the third time he got on his horse, and he got so close, but he said, look, I don't want to harm you, stop. So they stopped. And a conversation took place, and he said, look, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I know this is something supernatural. What's happened to me has never happened before. And I want you, and I know that you're going to be a successful person, your religion. And I just want you to give me some guarantee that when that happens, I'm going to be safe. I don't want to be in any trouble. And so Rasulullah said, of course, write it for him. He said, write it for me. So I think the servant of Abu Bakr, he wrote something on a patch of leather or something, okay? Abu Bakr could write as well. And so as he was about to go, as Suraka was about to go, he called him back and he said, Suraka, he said, yes, he said, what about the golden bangles of Shosro, you know, Kisra, yeah, on your wrist? Then how about wearing those? And he said, Kisra, of Hormuz, you know, the Iranian at that time, Persian emperor. He said, that's right. Rasulullah smiled, and he said, that's right. And so it was. This promise was also made to Suraka ibn Malik, that you will wear the coat of armor, the golden, you know, crown and everything, and the bangles. You will be entrusted with those. Who could believe? I mean, at that time, you know. But Suraka went away, and on the way back, whenever he met somebody looking for the Prophet, he would say to them, I have looked for them everywhere. He was protecting him now, right? And he said, this was, you know, don't go, because they're not on that journey, right? So this was the second event. And the third event that I call the miraculous event was, they came across a camp, you know, a tent. And a lady was sitting, she normally would sit in that tent and feed people who were passing by food and so on. But this time she was sat and she didn't have anything. She didn't have many sheep or things. And inside there wasn't any food either. But she was sat there, and then so Rasulullah and Abu Bakr said to her, is there anything, you know, we want to buy some food from you, drink and food. She said, I have nothing, you know. He said, well, what about your animals? Oh, look, they're all gone, and my husband's out with them, and we haven't got much actually. So they spotted a sheep, an old sheep there, and Rasulullah said, what about that sheep there then? Oh, this had, you can see it's so weak, that's why it's not gone with the other sheep. It's disabled, in other words. It's gone, it's on its last legs. Rasulullah said, well, can I come and, you know, feel its glands? The lady said, be my guest, in other words, come on, do it, yeah? So Rasulullah got off, the sheep was brought near, and he felt the glands of said dua, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and he said dua, and slowly, and put his hand on the gland, and slowly the sheep started to produce milk. So he said, bring a container, and they brought the container, and he milked the sheep, and the container was frothing, you know, so much milk was produced. So he gave it to the Abu Bakr Siddiq and the Amir, you know, Amir, the servant Abu Bakr, he was still with them. And also the lady, and then he drank from it last, because he says the one who offers should always be the last. In other words, the guest is always the last who, you know, eats or drinks. Anyway, so this was another miraculous thing. And he paid for the price of the sheep. He said they gave some money to the lady. And they went away from there. On the way to Medina, they met Zubair radiallahu anhu. He was bringing back something back from Syria. some trade. They used to do trade, yeah, and he had some clothes, so he gave clothes, white robes to Abu Bakr and Siddiq radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the travel continued until they reached Khutbah. Now Khutbah was on the outskirts of Medina. People who've been for Umrah, you know that Khutbah, and the name is out there outside, and the name was from the name of a well, and the village became commonly known as Khutbah. Okay, and there Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed with the Banu Amr bin Auf. You know, they lived there, and he stayed for something like 10 nights in Khutbah. According to another version, he stayed 4 days in Banu Amr, and so on, a bit longer. But anyway, after that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Medina Munawwara, made his way. And then the people, of course, were all waiting for Rasulullah to come. And there was a Jewish guy who was actually attending to his roof. So he climbed the roof of the rooftop, and he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr Siddiq, you know, on the camels coming. And he sort of kind of figured that they're the ones that the people are waiting for. And he shouted, you know, oh people, come on, your expectations are here, you know, your guests are coming. And so they all greeted, and the children of Medina were singing songs in favor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in happiness to receive him. And of course, the camel went, and everybody was saying, stay here, stay there. But the camel of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went, and it sat where there was a yard, open space, and that belonged to two children, Sohail and Saham. They were actually orphans, and that's where the camel sat, and that's where the Masjid Nabawi was established. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam established 2 mosques. The first one he established at Khutbah. First thing he did was establish a masjid, and then the second one that he established was, as soon as he got off, he said, let's build a mosque, and this is Masjid al-Nabawi that we know now. Okay, the foundations were laid down by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he participated in the actual building of the masjid as well. So brothers and sisters, this was just a brief run over of the greatest event in the Islamic history called the Hijra, because now the Muslims were in a position to pray freely and to, you know, live their lives freely without the fear of being persecuted and so on and prohibited. And of course, one of the first things that Rasulullah did, he established the Islamic Brotherhood. The Islamic Brotherhood actually starts from Medina Munawwara. Because see, when he got there, the Ansar, the Muhajirun didn't have anything, did they? They came empty-handed. So Rasulullah said, okay, 1 Muhajir with 1 Ansar. He said to the Ansar, I will put 1 Muhajir with you and into your house, and you will then be brothers, and you will look after it. And that's what happened. So the Islamic Brotherhood, brothers and sisters, started from that instance. And the society was established. It's a society which, within a short period of time, you can imagine there were 60 plus people, something like in Mecca, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preaching for 13 years. After 2 years, the Battle of Badr took place, and there were 319 people who participated in that. And then after about 6 years, 10,000 people went with Rasulullah. So remember, Rasulullah stayed for 10 years in Medina. So after 6 years, they went to on the Fath al-Makkah, okay, and there were 10,000 people. And then, of course, once Makkah was conquered, and then, you know, the Tabuk and the Hunain, there was something like 70,000 Muslims participating. So you can see Islam was expanding very, very quickly. And brothers and sisters, Islam is still expanding, despite the hindrances of the kuffar and the other people in all over the world to hinder the progress of Islam. Islam is still the most accepted religion on the planet, the most liked, and you know, people who open the Quran and you know, out of curiosity sometimes, especially during this Palestinian genocide and so on. And so people have been curious, you know, these people have been suffering, you know, what is it that their book is called Quran? Let's have a look at the Quran. And they open it. A lot of people have become Muslims by reading the Quran and so on. So Islam is still expanding and it will continue to expand. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وعلى أصحاب محمد بعدد كل ذرة 100,000 مرة وبارك وسلم عليهم أجمعين. So brothers and sisters, I'm just going to conclude. The khutbah today was on the Hijra, the greatest event in the Islamic history, where a great migration took place. And of course, the calendar, let me just tell you in this last part of the khutbah, the calendar, the Hijri calendar was established after this. And I tell you why, because 17 years after the Prophet's migration, and in the third or fourth year of the succession of the Khalifa Umar radiallahu anhu, a complaint was made by Abu Musa al-Ashari. And he said that he wrote a letter to Abu Umar radiallahu anhu, and he said regarding a lack of consistency in the dates on the correspondence he receives. In other words, there was confusion, lack of consistency in the dates, yeah? And he was an official in Basra. So Abu Musa al-Ashari sent a letter, and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu consulted the Sahaba, especially the senior Sahaba, and he made shura, and it was decided. And some of them said, okay, let's start with the, with the birth of the Prophet ﷺ as the beginning. Some said, no, let's start with the death because that was known more accurately. But the majority of them said, no, let's start with the first month should be the first, in other words, in our calendar should be the migration of Rasulullah from Makkah to Medina, the Hijra. That's when we should. So Muharram, the month which is coming in 2 days, I think, or 3 days, okay? The first month in the Islamic calendar is Muharram, and that is the first month in the calendar. And by the way, in terms of the English, the Gregorian calendar, it was 622 AD when the migration took place of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is, so our calendar is called the Hijri calendar. So brothers and sisters, I hope I've been giving you some sort of idea of the calamity that existed, of the severity that existed in Mecca, which actually forced. Nobody wants to leave their home, do they? Do you want to leave your home? No, we're all here as migrants. No, we've come here for a reason. Our migration, I don't think, is religious. Maybe in some cases, I don't know. It's more economic. But the point is, there is a reason for migration. And the reason for the Sahaba and Rasulullah to migrate was nothing other than persecution for Allah. Migration for the sake of Allah. And that's why the Quran is full of praise for them. Because when you do something for the sake of Allah, the reward is great. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we've witnessed Sahaba like Khalid bin Walid, one of our great generals. Khalid bin Walid was one of these, I'm going to end the khutbah. Khalid bin Walid was one of these generals who actually fought so many more battles than anybody else. And he never got shaheed in any of the battles. When he was dying, he was crying on his bed. And they asked him, why are you crying, Khalid? And he said, I'm crying because I've got all the wounds, all the marks. His body was full of cuts here and there, everywhere. He said, I'm crying because I wish I was a shaheed in a battle and I didn't get shaheed, shahada. I didn't martyrdom. I didn't get the martyrdom in any. So we have great people like that who was, responsible for so many great battles and other Sahaba, great Sahaba, who spread Islam. With their help, we have the Islam that we actually have today. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, brothers and sisters, to implement this Islam that they brought with difficulty, to implement it into our lives properly. Because we have it on the plate, don't we? We have the book of Allah and we have the sunnah of the Rasul, the two things that they left behind. And we need to implement them into our lives to make our life successful in this world and the afterworld. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. تقبل الله منا ومنكم إن شاء الله. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأجل وأتم وأكبر. صدق الله. أقيموا الصلاة.